The room fell silent. Forks stopped midair. My son David's face went pale while my husband George shifted uncomfortably. Only Vanessa, my daughter-in-law, continued eating, as if she hadn't just driven a knife through my heart. "Don't you think so, Martha?" she asked with those cold blue eyes. "The sapphire set would really bring out Rebecca's eyes. They're wasted sitting in your jewelry box." Wasted. The word hung between us. 40 years of marriage, 3 children raised, a lifetime of memories, and to Vanessa they were simply wasted. I straightened my back, careful not to let my hands shake. Before we continue, comment where you're watching from and subscribe to the channel. We'd love to see how far our stories are reaching. "These pieces have been in my family for generations, Vanessa. They're not fashion accessories." She shrugged, sipping her mimosa. "I'm just saying they should be worn. Rebecca would actually wear them." I caught the exchange of glances between her and David. He looked down, avoiding my eyes. This wasn't just a casual comment. They had discussed this before. "Perhaps we should change the subject," George suggested. "Martha spent all morning preparing this brunch to celebrate our anniversary. Our 40th wedding anniversary. The brunch I'd spent days planning. All to create a perfect memory, only to discover they'd been plotting to redistribute my possessions while I was still alive." I forced a smile. "Who wants coffee?" Later that evening, I sat alone with my mother's cherry wood jewelry box. I lifted out the sapphire set my grandmother wore on her wedding day, my mother at my father's funeral, and I when David was born. "Wasted," I whispered. This wasn't Vanessa's first cutting remark. When she married David 5 years ago, she was charming. She called me Mom and asked about family recipes. But something changed. The calls became infrequent, visits shorter. Her comments about my home, cooking, appearance, all delivered with a smile but laced with judgment, became frequent. "Your house is so traditional, Martha. Have you thought about updating it? You still cook that way? Most people use Sue. Vide now. That dress is very age-appropriate." I'd brushed it aside for peace. David seemed happy. But the jewelry comment struck differently. These weren't just things. They were my history, connections to the women before me. I checked text messages between David and me, mostly my unanswered questions about visits, thank you notes, holiday plans. The pattern was clear. David only responded when they needed something. Our last real conversation was 3 months ago when he asked to borrow money for a car down payment. Despite their good jobs, they'd asked for financial help before. We always gave without question. I looked at David's graduation photo, his arm around me, both beaming. I barely recognized that woman, confident, valued, essential to her son's life. When had I become someone whose treasured possessions were wasted on her? When had my only child decided I wasn't worthy of respect? I placed the photo face down and returned to the jewelry box. As I touched the cool metal and smooth stones, an idea formed. Not revenge exactly, but a statement they couldn't ignore. Next morning, after George left for golf, I called my college friend Elaine, now a metalworker and artist. "Elaine? It's Martha. I need your expertise on something unusual." 2 hours later, I sat in her studio, my jewelry box open between us. "You want to do what?" she asked, eyebrows raised. "I want to melt them down and recast them," I said, "into small sculptures, bullet-shaped sculptures, with your daughter-in-law and her sister's initials." I nodded, strangely calm. "Can you do it?" Elaine studied me. "The bigger question is, should I? These pieces are valuable, not just monetarily, but historically. Are you sure?" "I'm not destroying them," I said firmly. "I'm transforming them. They were symbols of one thing. Now they'll be symbols of something else. And what would that be?" I thought about Vanessa's dismissive comments, David's silent complicity, my eroding position in my son's life. They'll be symbols that I still have power over my own possessions, that I can't be ignored, that I matter. We talked for hours about feeling invisible in my own family, how Vanessa had pushed me to the margins of David's life, my fear that they would take everything, not just jewelry, but my dignity and voice. By the end, my plan had evolved, but the core remained. I would transform my jewelry into something that couldn't be coveted or worn by Vanessa or Rebecca, couldn't be appreciated in their way. I would reclaim control of my legacy and make them see me, not as an aging woman whose possessions were up for grabs, but as someone with the power to surprise them, to shock them, to show them I wasn't finished yet. As I left Elaine's studio, a weight lifted from my shoulders. For the first time in years, I was taking action. Instead of absorbing blows, I didn't realize this decision would transform not just my jewelry, but me. The woman who entered that studio wasn't the same one who left, and none of them would recognize the woman I was about to become. I spent the next week watching my family with new eyes. It's amazing what you see when you're no longer trying to maintain a comfortable illusion. George noticed the change in me right away. "You've been quiet since the brunch," he said one evening as we washed dishes together. "Are you still upset about what Vanessa said?" I handed him a plate to dry. It wasn't just what she said. It was how David reacted, like he agreed with her. George sighed. "He's caught in the middle, Martha. You know how it is with marriages." "Yes, I do know," I said firmly. "And I know that you would never sit quietly if someone disrespected me like that." He had no response to that. I decided to dig deeper into what was happening. I called my daughter Jennifer, who lived in California. She'd always been more observant than me when it came to family dynamics. "Honestly, Mom, I'm not surprised," she said after I told her about the brunch incident. "Vanessa's been making comments like that for years. Remember Thanksgiving when she asked if you were planning to update your grandmother's stuffing recipe? I thought she was just trying to be helpful," I said, feeling embarrassed that I'd been so naive. "No, Mom. She's been systematically pushing you out of David's life. I've tried to talk to him about it, but he gets defensive." "Has she ever mentioned my jewelry to you?" I asked. A pause. "She asked me last Christmas if I thought you'd ever consider passing down some pieces to her. I told her those decisions were up to you." My stomach tightened. "And David? What did he say?" Another pause, longer this time. "He said it made sense for the jewelry to go to people who would actually wear it." The betrayal stung like a physical pain. I thanked Jennifer and hung up, needing time to process this information. The next day, I met Elaine for coffee to discuss my project. She'd brought sketches of what the bullet sculptures might look like. "I've been thinking," I said, studying the drawings. "I don't just want Vanessa and Rebecca's initials. I want David's too." Elaine looked up sharply. "Are you sure? I thought this was about your daughter-in-law and her sister." "It was, but I've learned some things." I told her about my conversation with Jennifer. "David isn't just caught in the middle. He's actively participating." Elaine nodded slowly. "This isn't really about the jewelry, is it?" "No," I admitted. "It's about respect, about being seen as a person, not just some obstacle to get around or some resource to exploit." "What about George? Does he know what you're planning?" I shook my head. "No, I love him, but he'd try to talk me out of it. He's always been a peacekeeper, even when peace comes at my expense." Later that day, while organizing my desk, I found an old greeting card from David. It was for Mother's Day, just 3 years ago. The handwritten note inside read, "To the strongest woman I know, thank you for teaching me what really matters in life. I love you, Mom." I ran my fingers over his handwriting, wondering what had changed. When had Vanessa's vision of family, where older members were just obstacles or resources, replaced what I thought I'd taught him? My phone buzzed with a text from David. "Mom, Vanessa and I want to come by next weekend. There's something we'd like to discuss." I showed the message to George at dinner. "What do you think they want to discuss?" I asked. George looked uncomfortable. "I'm not sure, but maybe it's about what happened at the brunch. Maybe they want to apologize." I wasn't convinced. "Or maybe they want to discuss my jewelry again." George sighed. "Martha, please don't jump to conclusions. Let's just hear them out." That Saturday, David and Vanessa arrived promptly at noon. Vanessa was wearing a blue blouse that matched her eyes that would supposedly be enhanced by my sapphires. "Mom, you look well," David said, kissing my cheek. The formality in his voice made my heart sink. We sat in the living room with coffee and the cookies I'd baked that morning. Vanessa complimented the cookies while eyeing the family photos on the mantel. "So," I said after the small talk had run, "it's course. You wanted to discuss something?" David and Vanessa exchanged glances. He nodded slightly, and she straightened her posture. "Martha," Vanessa began, her voice honey-sweet, "we've been thinking about what I said at the brunch. I want to apologize if I offended you. That wasn't my intention." An apology that included "if I offended you" wasn't really an apology. But I nodded, waiting for the real reason they'd come. "The thing is," David continued, "we do think there's a practical conversation to be had about family heirlooms." "Practical," I repeated, the word tasting bitter. Yes, Vanessa jumped in. You have so many beautiful pieces that just sit in a box. My sister Rebecca is getting married next spring, and we thought how wonderful it would be if she could wear something meaningful for her something borrowed. Something borrowed, I said, emphasizing the word, meaning it would be returned. Vanessa's smile faltered. Well, we thought it might be a nice gesture to give her something. Perhaps the sapphire set. It would mean so much to her. I looked at David, searching for any sign that he remembered who these pieces really belonged to, who they represented, what they meant. What do you think, Mom? He asked, and I could hear in his voice that he expected me to agree, that I would, as always, put aside my own feelings to make others comfortable. I set my coffee cup down carefully. I think, I said slowly, that I'm not ready to part with my jewelry yet. Vanessa's smile disappeared completely. But Martha, you never wear them. They're just sitting in a box. They're my possessions, I said, my voice firmer now. And they're not just jewelry. They're connections to my mother, my grandmother. They're part of my history. Mom, David said, his tone condescending. No one's saying they're not important. But isn't it better for them to be appreciated? To be part of new memories? I studied my son's face, this person I'd raised, looking for the boy who once understood what really mattered. I couldn't find him. The jewelry stays with me, I said. And that's final. The tension in the room was thick enough to cut. George, ever the mediator, jumped in with an offer of more coffee, trying to smooth over the moment. But as I watched, Vanessa's tight smile and David's disappointed expression, I knew this wasn't the end of the discussion. This was just the beginning. And my decision to transform the jewelry felt more right than ever. After they left, I called Elaine. I'm ready, I told her. Let's start tomorrow. The next morning, I drove to Elaine's studio with my jewelry box on the passenger seat. George had asked where I was going, and I'd simply said, to see Elaine. Not a lie, but not the whole truth either. I wasn't ready to explain my plan to him. Elaine was waiting for me, her workspace already set up. She'd cleared her main workbench and laid out tools I didn't recognize. The sight made my heart race. I was really doing this. Did you bring everything? She asked as I placed the wooden box on her table. Yes, I said, running my hand over the lid. Everything that matters. I opened the box and carefully removed each piece. The sapphire set that had started all this, my mother's pearl necklace, the emerald earrings from my grandmother, the diamond bracelet George had given me for our 20th anniversary, and several other pieces collected over a lifetime. Elaine whistled softly. Martha, are you absolutely sure? These are beautiful pieces. Once we melt them down, there's no going back. I nodded. I'm sure, but I need to do something first. I took out my phone and photographed each item. I want to remember them as they were. Smart, Elaine said. Now let's talk specifics. I've sketched some designs based on what you said. She showed me drawings of small bullet-shaped sculptures, elegant despite their unusual form. Each would be about 2 inches tall, with space for initials engraved at the base. I like them, I said. Simple but powerful. 3 of them, right? With the initials V, R, and D? Yes, I confirmed. Vanessa, Rebecca, and David. Elaine raised an eyebrow. Not George? I shook my head. No. He's failed to stand up for me at times, but he's never tried to take what's mine. She nodded, understanding. This will take time. The melting, casting, and finishing. About 2 weeks. Are you prepared for questions when people notice your jewelry is gone? I hadn't thought of that. I'll say I'm having the pieces cleaned and appraised. That should buy enough time. Okay, now for the practical part. I need to separate the metals and stones. The gold and silver will melt, but the gems will need to be reset or incorporated differently. What do you suggest? Elaine thought for a moment. We could embed them in the bullets, like eyes. It would be symbolic, the watching eyes of the women who owned these jewels before. The idea sent a shiver through me. Yes, that's perfect. As Elaine began examining the pieces and making notes, I felt a strange mixture of emotions. Part of me mourned what I was about to destroy. Another part felt liberated. Can I help? I asked. Elaine looked surprised. You want to participate in the process? Yes. These are my pieces, my history. I should be part of transforming them. She smiled. I think that's a great idea. You can help with the design elements and some of the finishing work. I'll handle the technical aspects that require training. For the next few hours, we worked together, planning the transformation. Elaine taught me how to measure and mark the metal, how different gems would react to heat, how to think about balance and weight in a small sculpture. By the time I left that afternoon, the project felt real. We'd created a timeline, made material, lists, and scheduled my next visit. My jewelry remained with Elaine, safely locked in her fireproof safe. On the drive home, my phone rang. It was Jennifer. "Mom, have you talked to David recently?" she asked without preamble. "He and Vanessa visited yesterday. They want my jewelry for Rebecca's wedding." Jennifer sighed. "I was afraid of that. He called me this morning asking me to talk some sense into you." His words, not mine. My hands tightened on the steering wheel. "What did you tell him?" "I told him, your jewelry is yours to do with as you please, and he needed to respect that." He didn't like it. "Thank you," I said, grateful for her support. "Mom?" Jennifer hesitated. "What are you planning to do? You don't sound upset, just determined." I considered telling her about the bullet sculptures, but decided against it. The fewer people who knew, the better. I'm going to stand my ground. That's all. When I got home, George was waiting with a troubled expression. "David called," he said. "He's upset about yesterday." "I'm not surprised," I replied, hanging up my coat. "Martha, maybe we should reconsider. If the jewelry just sits in a box?" I cut him off. "The jewelry is mine, George. Would you give away your father's watch? Or the first edition books your grandfather left you?" He looked away. "That's different." "How? Because they're men's possessions? Because they matter to you?" "No, because—" He stopped, unable to find a reasonable difference. "Exactly," I said. "These pieces represent my family history, not just pretty things to wear, and I've decided they stay with me." George sighed. "I don't want to fight. I just want peace in the family. Peace shouldn't always come at my expense," I said quietly. That evening, David texted again. "Mom, can we talk? Just the two of us?" I agreed to meet him for lunch the next day at a cafe downtown. Part of me hoped he'd come around, see things from my perspective. The son I raised had to be in there somewhere. The cafe was crowded when I arrived, but David had secured a corner table. He stood when he saw me, kissing my cheek before we sat down. "Thanks for meeting me," he said, looking uncomfortable. "Of course. What did you want to discuss?" He fidgeted with his napkin. "About the jewelry. I think there's been a misunderstanding." "What's there to misunderstand?" "Vanessa wants my jewelry for her sister." I said no. David winced. "It's not just for Rebecca. Vanessa thought you might want to start passing down family pieces now while you can see them being enjoyed." "While I can see them?" I repeated. "Am I dying and no one told me?" "Mom, please. You know what I mean. Many women your age start thinking about their legacy." "My legacy," I said flatly. "David, those pieces are my legacy. They connect me to the women who came before me, who wore them during important moments in their lives. And they could connect future generations too," he argued. "Isn't that what legacy is about? Passing things down? When I'm ready," I said, firmly. "Not when Vanessa decides it's time." David sighed, frustration evident. "Why are you being so difficult about this?" "It's just jewelry." Those words cut deep. "It's not just jewelry to me," I said quietly. "And if you can't understand that, then you don't understand me at all." He looked away, jaw tense. "Vanessa says you're being selfish. And what do you say? David? Do you think I'm selfish for wanting to keep my own possessions?" He didn't answer directly. "I think families should share with each other." "Sharing goes both ways," I pointed out. "What has Vanessa offered to share with me?" Again, no direct answer. "Mom, please just consider it for family harmony." I studied my son, this person I'd raised to be kind and considerate. Where had those qualities gone? "I'll think about it," I said, not because I would, but because I needed this conversation to end. He brightened immediately. "Really? That's great. Vanessa will be so pleased." Of course that was his concern. Vanessa's pleasure, not mine. When I left the cafe, I called Elaine immediately. "Can we speed up the process?" I asked. "I need this finished sooner than we planned." "I can try," she said. "What happened? I'll tell you tomorrow. I'm coming in to help." That night, I lay awake next to George, listening to his steady breathing. I hadn't told him about my lunch with David or my plans for the jewelry. The distance between us felt wider than the few inches separating our bodies. Tomorrow, I would begin the actual transformation of my jewelry. And as I drifted off to sleep, I realized something was already being transformed. Me. For 10 days, I spent every morning at Elaine's studio. I told George I was taking a metalworking class, which wasn't entirely untrue. The rest of the day, I maintained my normal routine: shopping, gardening, phone calls, acting as if nothing had changed. On the first day, Elaine taught me to separate gemstones from their settings. With small tools and careful hands, I removed sapphires, emeralds, diamonds, and pearls from their gold and silver homes. "How does it feel?" Elaine asked as I placed the last stone in a compartment box. "Strange," I admitted, "like I'm saying goodbye but also hello to something new." The melting process was fascinating. Elaine handled the technical parts, but I watched as my grandmother's bracelet, my mother's necklace, and my rings became liquid, metal, glowing orange. "Gold melts at over 1,800 degrees, Elaine explained. "We're literally changing the structure of these metals." By the end of the week, we had 3 bullet-shaped molds ready. Elaine showed me how to pour the molten metal. "You're good at this," she commented. "I'm motivated," I replied. The bullets took shape, cooling from orange to yellow. They were simple, about 2 inches tall, smooth and tapered at the top. Next, we set the gemstones: sapphires for Vanessa's bullet, emeralds for Rebecca's, and diamonds for David's. "The gems will be like eyes," Elaine said, watching them, reminding them of what they tried to take. Then we added the initials, VRD, engraved at the base of each bullet in elegant script. Permanent. The final step was polishing. I spent hours with increasingly fine sandpaper, bringing out the shine in each piece. "They're stunning," Elaine said on the 10th day as we placed them in a velvet-lined box, different from the original jewelry but carrying the same essence. I ran my finger over the cool metal. "Thank you for helping me." As I drove home with the box, I received a text from David. "Mom, Vanessa and I would like to come by this weekend to continue our discussion about the jewelry. Rebecca will be in town too." "Perfect timing," I thought. I replied, "That sounds fine. Come for Sunday dinner. I have something to share with you." At home, George was waiting. "Martha, I need to talk to you." "What is it?" I asked, hiding the box in my purse. David called. "He said you've been avoiding making a decision about the jewelry." "I haven't been avoiding anything. I've been considering my options." "And?" "I've invited them for dinner on Sunday. I'll give them my answer then." George seemed relieved. "I'm glad you're being reasonable. Family harmony is worth more than possessions." I smiled but said nothing. He had no idea what was coming. The next days passed in preparation. I decided to make dinner special: prime rib, roasted vegetables, homemade bread. Sunday arrived. I set the table with my best china and crystal glasses. George watched approvingly. "You've gone all out. I'm glad you're taking this so positively." If only he knew. David, Vanessa, and Rebecca arrived at 5. Rebecca, whom I hadn't seen in over a year, greeted me with a rehearsed kiss. She was a younger version of Vanessa. Same blonde hair, same calculating eyes, same practiced smile. "Martha, your home looks lovely," she said, glancing around as if assessing its value. "Vanessa's told me so much about your family heirlooms." "I bet she has," I thought. We gathered for drinks. I served wine to everyone except myself. I wanted complete clarity. "No wine, Mom?" David asked. "Not today. I want to be fully present for our discussion." Vanessa and Rebecca exchanged glances. George looked nervous. Dinner went smoothly, conversation avoiding the topic we were all thinking about. David complimented the food. Rebecca asked about my garden. Vanessa remained unusually quiet, watching me. After dessert, I suggested we move to the living room. "Before we get comfortable," I said, "I'd like to get something from my study." I returned with the velvet box and placed it on the coffee table. Everyone's eyes fixed on it. "Is that?" Vanessa began, leaning forward. "My jewelry?" I finished. "Yes and no." George frowned. "Martha, what do you mean?" I took a deep breath. "For weeks now, there's been discussion about my jewelry, about who should have it, who would appreciate it more, who would actually wear it." David looked uncomfortable. Rebecca's eyes remained fixed on the box. Vanessa's expression was triumphant. "I've given this a lot of thought," I continued, "and I've come to a decision about these family heirlooms." Vanessa smiled. "I'm so glad you're being reasonable, Martha." "Let me finish," I said firmly. "These pieces weren't just jewelry to me. They were connections to my mother, my grandmother, my history." "We understand that," David said quickly, "and we'll treasure them just as much." "Will you?" I asked, when Vanessa said they were being wasted sitting in my jewelry box. When you told Jennifer it made sense for the jewelry to go to people who would actually wear it, David paled. Mom, I didn't mean… Yes, you did, I cut in. So I decided to transform these pieces into something that truly represents our current family dynamic. I opened the box. 4 pairs of eyes widened in shock. George gasped. David's mouth fell open. Rebecca took a step back, and Vanessa's face drained of color. There, nestled in black velvet, lay 3 gleaming bullet sculptures. Gold, silver, and a combination of both, studded with gemstones. At the base of each, a single initial, V, R, and D. What have you done? Vanessa whispered. I've created something new, I said calmly. Something that can't be worn, can't be flaunted, can't be taken from me under the guise of appreciation. These are my family heirlooms now, transformed to represent exactly how I feel about each of you. The silence in the room was deafening. David was the first to break the silence. Mom, this is… I don't know what to say. Disturbing, Vanessa supplied, her voice tight. This is disturbing. I kept my hands folded in my lap, calm despite the storm brewing around me. Is it? I thought you wanted these pieces to be appreciated in a new way. Rebecca, who had been staring at the emerald-studded bullet with her initial, finally found her voice. This isn't appreciation. This is destruction. You've ruined priceless heirlooms. Not ruined, I corrected. Transformed. They're still the same materials, just in a different form. One that represents how I feel about this situation. George hadn't spoken yet. He was looking at the bullets, then at me, as if seeing a stranger. Why would you do this? David asked, genuine confusion in his voice. If you didn't want to give us the jewelry, you could have just said no. I did say no, I replied evenly. Multiple times. But you didn't listen. None of you did. You kept pushing, kept trying to make me feel selfish for wanting to keep my own possessions. Vanessa stood up, her face flushed with anger now. So this is your revenge? Destroying family heirlooms to spite us? Not revenge, I said. A statement, and not just about the jewelry. About respect. About recognizing that I'm still here, still part of this family, still the owner of my own possessions and my own life. David shook his head. I don't understand, Mom. This isn't like you. Maybe you don't know me as well as you think, I suggested. Maybe none of you do, or maybe I've changed. People do, you know. Rebecca reached for her purse. This is ridiculous. I didn't come here to be insulted. No, I agreed. You came here to get my jewelry. But as you can see, that's no longer an option. Martha, George finally spoke, his voice strained. Why didn't you tell me about this? Would you have supported me, George? Or would you have tried to talk me out of it, to keep the peace? He didn't answer, which was answer enough. David leaned forward, elbows on his knees. What do you want? From us, Mom? An apology? Fine. I'm sorry we pushed about the jewelry. But this… He gestured at the bullets. This is extreme. This is exactly what needed to happen. I countered. For too long, I've been quiet when I should have spoken up. I've stepped aside when I should have stood my ground. I've let peace come at the cost of my own dignity. Vanessa let out a harsh laugh. So dramatic. They're just things, Martha. Get over yourself. Just things? I repeated. That's interesting. Coming from the person who couldn't stop talking about how much she wanted these just things for her sister. Vanessa's face flushed deeper. You've lost your mind. No, I said firmly. I've found my voice. Rebecca stood now too. This is a waste of time. Vanessa, David, let's go. Wait, David said, still looking at me. Mom, can't we talk about this? Rationally? There must be a way to fix the situation. Fix it? I asked. You mean undo what I've done? That's not possible. The transformation is permanent, just like the damage to our relationship. The room fell silent again. I could feel the weight of their stares, anger, confusion, judgment. I didn't flinch. I think, George said carefully, that we all need some time to process this. Maybe it's best if everyone goes home for now. Vanessa grabbed her coat. Gladly. I've had enough of this insanity. Rebecca followed without another word. David lingered, looking torn. Mom, he started, but I cut him off. You should go with your wife, David. We can talk when you're ready to really listen. After they left, George and I sat in silence for several minutes. The velvet box remained open on the coffee table, the 3 bullets gleaming under the living room lights. I don't understand why you didn't tell me, he finally said. Because you would have stopped me. Yes, I would have. This is extreme, Martha. I turned to face him. What would you have suggested instead? That I hand over my mother's jewelry to a woman who called it wasted on me? That I let them continue to push me aside like I don't matter? George sighed, heavily. Of course not. But there must have been a middle ground. I tried the middle ground. For years, I've tried diplomacy and peacemaking. It didn't work. It didn't work. And now? He asked. What happens now? I closed the velvet box. Now they know where I stand. The rest is up to them. That night, I slept surprisingly well. The weight I'd been carrying for weeks, maybe years, had lifted. I had stood my ground. I had made myself heard. The next morning, my phone started ringing early. Jennifer was the first to call. David told me what you did, she said without preamble. I wish I could have seen their faces. Despite everything, I laughed. It was quite a moment. Are you okay? I know this couldn't have been easy. I'm better than I've been in a long time, I admitted. I didn't realize how much I needed to do this. Good for you, Mom. Seriously. It's about time someone stood up to Vanessa, and David needed a wake-up call. Later that day, I received a text from David. Can we talk? Just us. I agreed to meet him at a cafe downtown the next afternoon. This time, I arrived first and chose a quiet corner table. When David arrived, he looked tired, with dark circles under his eyes. Thanks for meeting me, he said, sliding into the seat across from me. Of course. He ordered coffee, then leaned forward. I've been thinking about what happened, about the jewelry, about what you said. I waited, letting him find his words. I didn't realize how much those pieces meant to you, and I didn't see how Vanessa and I were pushing you aside. I believe you. Didn't see it, I said, but it was happening all the same. He nodded slowly. When I saw what you'd done to the jewelry, my first thought was that you'd gone crazy, but then I started thinking about why you'd do something so dramatic. You've never been impulsive or vindictive. No, I haven't. You must have felt really cornered. It wasn't a question, but I answered anyway. I felt invisible, David. Like my feelings, my history, my connection to those pieces didn't matter. Like I didn't matter. David's face crumpled a bit. I'm sorry, Mom. I really am. I got caught up in what Vanessa wanted, in keeping her happy. I didn't stop to think about what I was doing to you. And now? I asked. Where do we go from here? He sighed. Vanessa's furious. She says you deliberately humiliated her. Rebecca's not speaking to either of us. It's a mess. I didn't do this to humiliate anyone, I said firmly. I did it to make a statement that couldn't be ignored or dismissed. It worked, he said with a wry smile. No one's ignoring you now. We sat in silence for a moment, sipping our coffees. I miss the old days, David said suddenly, when it was simple, when I knew how to be your son. It can be simple again, I told him. Just respect me, see me. That's all I've ever wanted. I'll try, he promised. But it might take time for everyone to adjust to this new dynamic. I have time, I said. The question is, do you want to make the effort? He nodded. I do. You're my mother. I love you, even when I don't understand you. As we parted ways, I felt cautiously hopeful. David and I had taken a small step toward understanding. The road ahead wouldn't be easy. Vanessa's anger, Rebecca's silence, even George's confusion would all be obstacles. But for the first time in years, I felt like I was walking a path of my own choosing. Back home, I found George in the garden, pruning the rose bushes. He looked up as I approached. How was your talk with David? He asked. Better than I expected. He's making an effort to understand. George nodded, setting down his clippers. I've been thinking too. About what you said, about me always trying to keep the peace at your expense. And you were right. I should have stood up for you more. I'm sorry for that. It was a start, a small acknowledgement, but a meaningful one. What will you do with them? George asked, gesturing toward the house, meaning the bullets. Keep them, I said simply. They're mine, just like my voice, my dignity, my place in this family. Mine, to keep, mine to define. George looked at me for a long moment, then nodded. I'm starting to understand. 6 months passed. The initial shock of my decision faded, replaced by a new family dynamic. Not perfect, but more honest than before. I kept the bullet sculptures displayed in a small glass case in my living room. Some visitors found them odd, others intriguing. I never hid them or apologized for them. They were a reminder of the day I reclaimed my voice. David and I rebuilt our relationship slowly. We met weekly for coffee, just the two of us. Sometimes we talked about difficult things, his childhood, my feelings of invisibility, the changes in our family. Other times, we just enjoyed each other's company. He was making an effort, and I appreciated that. Vanessa remained distant. She declined most family gatherings, sending David alone with thin excuses. When she did attend, she was polite but cold. I didn't push for more. The wall between us was her choice as much as mine. Rebecca disappeared from my life entirely. According to David, she was engaged and planning her wedding. She didn't invite me. I wasn't surprised. The most significant change happened with George. After 40 years of marriage, we were learning to communicate in new ways. He started asking what I wanted instead of assuming. I started expressing my needs more clearly. I never realized how much I tried to make everyone else happy, he admitted one evening as we sat on the porch. Even when it meant ignoring what you needed. We both did it, I said. I went along with it for years. What changed? He asked. Why then, with the jewelry? I thought for a moment. It was the word wasted. The idea that something valuable to me was being wasted because I wasn't using it the way they thought I should. It made me realize they saw me the same way, something that had outlived its usefulness. George took my hand. I never saw you that way. I know, but you didn't stop them from seeing me that way. He nodded, accepting the truth of it. My relationship with Jennifer strengthened too. She visited for a week in June, bringing her husband and children. One afternoon, as we watched the kids play in the yard, she confessed something. I always worried I'd be treated like you were, she said, pushed aside when I wasn't useful anymore. Is it that why you moved so far away? I asked. She nodded. Partly. I needed distance to define my own life. I understand that now, I said, better than before. Jennifer noticed the velvet box on my dresser during her visit. Can I see them? She asked. The bullet sculptures? I opened the box for her. She studied them carefully, running a finger over the gemstones. They're beautiful in their own way, she said. Powerful. They're my best work. I joked. She looked at me seriously. No, Mom. Your best work is what you did after. Standing your ground, rebuilding relationships on your terms. That's your masterpiece. In July, we held a small family dinner for George's birthday. David came alone again. Vanessa sends her regrets, he said awkwardly. She has a work event. I nodded, knowing it was likely an excuse. How are things between you two? I asked when we had a moment alone. David sighed. Complicated. She's still angry about the jewelry. Says you humiliated her. And what do you think? He considered before answering. I think you did what you felt you had to do. I don't agree with how you did it, but I understand why. It was a fair assessment. I didn't need him to agree with my methods, just to respect my reasons. And how are you doing? I asked. I'm seeing things differently, he admitted. Patterns I didn't notice before. Not just with you, but with Vanessa too. I didn't press for details. His relationship with his wife was his to navigate. I'd made my statement. The rest was up to him. In August, I received an unexpected visitor. Elaine arrived carrying a small fabric bag. I've been working on something, she said, setting the bag on my kitchen table, inspired by what we did together. Inside was a beautiful silver pendant, modern and abstract. It's lovely, I said, examining the craftsmanship. It's more than that, Elaine explained. I've started a new collection called Transformations, jewelry that tells stories of change and renewal. She placed a business card beside the pendant. The gallery wants to feature the collection next month. I'd like to include your story. Anonymously, of course. I was stunned. My story? How you transformed family heirlooms into symbols of empowerment. It's compelling, Martha. It speaks to a lot of women our age who feel invisible. I thought about it overnight before calling her with my answer. Yes, you can include my story, but not anonymously. Use my name. Are you sure? She asked. It might stir things up again with your family. I'm sure, I said firmly. I'm not hiding anymore. The gallery opening was scheduled for September. I invited George, David, and Jennifer. To my surprise, they all agreed to come. The night of the event, I stood in front of the mirror examining myself. I wore a simple black dress and pearl earrings, not family heirlooms, but new ones I'd bought for myself. My hair was recently cut in a stylish bob that flattered my face. I looked strong, confident, changed. George appeared behind me. You look beautiful, he said, meeting my eyes in the mirror. Thank you, I replied, meaning it. David met us at the gallery. He'd come straight from work, still in his suit. No Vanessa again. This is impressive, he said, looking around at the crowd. Is Elaine's work always this popular? This collection seems to have struck a chord, I explained, especially with women. Jennifer and her husband arrived moments later. She hugged me tightly. I'm so proud of you, Mom. The gallery had displayed Elaine's pieces expertly. In the center of the main room was a glass case containing the 3 bullet sculptures, on loan for the exhibition. Beside them, a small plaque shared my story. People stopped to read it, then looked around until they spotted me. Some nodded in understanding. Others approached to share similar experiences of feeling invisible as they aged, of having their possessions and opinions dismissed. You've become something of an inspiration, Elaine said, joining me with a glass of champagne. The gallery owner wants to know if you'd consider speaking at an event next month about empowerment through art. I laughed softly. Me? A speaker? Why not? You have something important to say. I glanced across the room where George, David, and Jennifer were examining one of the displays. My family, still here despite everything, changed like me by what had happened. I'll think about it, I promised. At the end of the evening, as we prepared to leave, David pulled me aside. I wanted to tell you something, he said. Vanessa and I are separating. Oh, David, I said, genuinely concerned. I'm sorry. He shook his head. Don't be. It's been coming for a while. What happened with the jewelry? It made me see things differently, about how she treats people, about what I was becoming. I hugged him, feeling his grief but also his resolution. It won't be easy, I warned him. The right paths rarely are, he replied, echoing words I'd said to him when he was young. On the drive home, George was unusually quiet. Finally, he spoke. I'm proud of you, he said, eyes on the road, for finding your voice, for standing your ground. Even though it caused so much disruption, sometimes disruption is necessary for growth, he said. I'm learning that too. At home, I went straight to my jewelry box, no longer filled with heirlooms, but with new pieces I'd chosen for myself. Each one represented something important to me: independence, strength, renewal. I was no longer defined by what others expected me to be or what they thought I should value. I had defined myself through an act that some might call destructive, but that had ultimately been creative. The bullets with their coldly gleaming initials would return from the exhibition next month. I would place them back in their velvet box, not as weapons but as artifacts from a battle for respect that I had finally won, not through violence but through transformation, of metal, of relationships, and most importantly, of myself.